We have tonight with us, from my left, Rafael Mandelman, a recently elected member of the Community College Board. We have next to him Wendy Kaufym, who is an engineering instructor at City College, and next to her Shanell Williams, currently president of the Associated Student Council, and I noticed a candidate for trustee.
Yeah.
I saw your campaign literature the other day at the big campus. So they're all going to speak to us tonight from their varying perspectives on this problem of this institution. Everyone knows how important it is.
What happened to the school last year was not about accreditation. You know, that's not the crisis that happened when I was out on sabbatical. What I'm talking about is a rogue interim administration which is using accreditation to push through their own agenda. And this is an agenda that seeks to diminish the voice of faculty, students, and staff. It's an agenda that seeks to downsize the college, pushing our students into for-profit and online schools that will saddle them with crushing debt. And it is an agenda about union busting. Some of the things that this administration has already done is they've changed our mission statement. We no longer have as a priority in our mission lifelong learning, civic engagement, or cultural enrichment. Personally, I see this as tragic. They've already severely cut classes and student services. They've laid off approximately 30 instructors, 20 counselors, and 40 staff. And they've imposed pay cuts without negotiating with the appropriate unions. In fact, there's an unfair labor practice grievance against them. They've also adopted a drastic restructuring of academic affairs with absolutely no input from the stakeholders. These interim administrators, I actually call them carpetbaggers, have no interest in the rich history or the mission of City College of San Francisco, much less the voices of the students, the staff, and the faculty, or the community of San Francisco. So you may ask, how did this come about? Well, this interim administration is very adept at manipulating our fears at every turn. They've used the accreditation crisis to install panic, telling us that if we let them do what they want, then our accreditation will be retained. They've created a shocked and demoralized community that's allowed them to get away with outrageous actions. If you've heard of Naomi Klein's shock doctrine, then you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so now you're asking yourself, how did this all come about? So let me start with the drastic cuts in state funding that City College has endured over the last 5 years. Instead of severely cutting back on the programs and the classes and the student services, City College made the decision to dip into the reserve funds. After all, isn't that what reserve funds are for? However, this put us in the crosshairs of our accreditation agency, the ACCJC, the Accreditation Commission for Community and Junior Colleges. Our low reserves was one of the root causes for them putting us on the sanction of show cause in June, I think it was June 2012, while I was on sabbatical. So show cause is just one level up from a school losing its life or death accreditation status. And this was despite the fact that there was not even one concern expressed in the report about the quality of our educational programs. In fact, for these we were praised. They also gave us credit for a very diverse faculty and extraordinary community relations. City College of San Francisco was rated as one of the top 10 community colleges in the nation by the New York Times. In its 77-year history, it has never had anything other than full accreditation status. Okay, so in its 77-year history, City College has never had anything other than full accreditation status. So is this a school that deserves to be put on show cause? You know, in my opinion, absolutely not. So why did we get this sanction of show cause? What exactly did the commission find lacking? Well, while the visiting team's report stated that there was poor fiscal planning, inefficient decision-making structures, and inadequately documented student learning outcomes, affectionately known as SLOs, the report in no way prepared anybody for the sanction of show cause. Even the members of the visiting team, I think, were surprised. I think it's appropriate at this point to mention that the ACCJC is actually considered by the lot a rogue agency. It sanctions colleges at a much higher rate than its sister accrediting agencies in other parts of the country. And furthermore, it's a private organization, partially funded by the pro-privatization foundations like Lumina. It has no transparency and very little public oversight. Nonetheless, City College faculty went into high gear addressing their portion of the problems identified in the Commission's report. We, the faculty, have documented our SLOs, and even at the March 21st Board of Trustee meeting, where the SLO coordinator, Katrin Weiss, presented her impressive progress report, even the Chancellor, Thelma Scott Skillman, commended the work of the faculty and compared it to a car going from 5 to 100 miles per hour in a short period of time. There still remains much work in the SLOs, but City College has leapt ahead in many areas to the other community colleges. You know, on another front, City College faculty, staff, students, and community went beyond their area of responsibility to address the Commission's concerns. They successfully placed a parcel tax on the November ballot last year, Proposition A, and they hit the streets asking the city to support it. 73% of San Francisco's voters approved it, showing their appreciation for City College. Proposition A will bring in an additional $14 to $16 million a year to City College for the next 8 years. This, along with Proposition 30, which was a statewide measure that passed, should have alleviated most of the budget problems. But our interim administration, our Chancellor, Dr. Scott Skillman, announced that the Measure A funds will not be used for educational purposes. The special trustee, Robert Agrella, who was imposed on us by the state due to the accreditation sanction, and he's making $1,000 a day, said that he did not feel bound to the ballot measure language. Clearly, these people have no long-term commitment to City College, and they're thwarting the will of the voters in a profound betrayal of the public trust. So what do they want to use the money for? Well, instead of using the funds to restore classes and prevent layoffs, they've employed high-priced consultants and lawyers, and they want to put more than necessary money into the reserve funds. They claim it's for accreditation purposes. However, their unilateral actions do not, in fact, address the accreditation concerns, and in reality, they often go contrary to the accreditation standards. Their actions have either been inept or intentionally enacted with the objective of downsizing the school or union busting. I actually have a whole list of to support these claims. You know, some are, as Annette Asimov would say, some are real head scratchers. And I'm not going to have time to go through the whole list, but I'll go through a few. The first is that the accreditation report states that City College does not have enough classified staff. Yet, the administration laid off over 40 classified staff who perform vital functions. Sorry. One example is the layoff of City College's only alternate media specialist, which is a position mandated by federal law. The administration was warned repeatedly about the consequences of this ill-advised layoff, and they risk, you know, having the district open to American with Disability Act lawsuits. 2, the accreditation report states that City College needs better technical support. Yet, one of the laid-off classified employees was an invaluable computer specialist who was always ready to help in a crisis. And I know because he's helped me many times. The current IT service desk supervisor reports that they're working with 1/3 less staff, and it often takes them weeks, sometimes months, to get computer problems addressed. The previous interim chancellor said, City College will remain open, but you may not recognize it. I reject this scenario. Save City College Coalition rejects this scenario. The real City College is a school of deserving and successful students dedicated staff, and determined teachers. And we will fight not just to keep City College open, but continuing to offer high quality and accessible education to all. You know, at the beginning, Tom said that this was a local issue. It's not. This is not just about City College. I believe that the future of higher education is at stake, and that City College is just at the forefront of the struggle.
So we've had some great successes, right? Just yesterday, we found out that the resolution around the Prop A funds, for it to be used as voters intended, actually got passed by the Board of Supervisors through the Budget and Finance Committee, which is really great, and it's going to be going to the full Board of Supervisors next Tuesday, which is really awesome. So that's, you know, lobby everyone on the Board of Supervisors to please support this resolution. It's about the voters and what that ballot language stated, that it should be used to prevent layoffs, it should be used to preserve classes, and the language in there is really great. And you know what's really sad today, I'm part of the Participatory Governance Council, and that body is basically, it's students, you know, faculty, administrators, and staff. We all sit at the table, and we basically make the budget decisions for the college, but you know, with the changes, it's gone from being sort of a real democratic process where we actually all vote to now we're just waiting to see what documents the administration is going to bring to us, and we just look at them and we say, okay, and then we don't really, you know, get a vote or move forward with anything. I actually heard in this meeting today that they said we're not going to make base enrollment. We're not going to make base enrollment next year, and we don't even know if we're going to make it for the following year. So, you know, this really angers me because I feel like we've been set up. And I'm going to tell you guys a little story that I was told that really, it really shocks me, but at the same time, it's, you know, with these attacks that are happening from these nonprofit foundations, these think tanks, Lumina Foundation, what Wendy mentioned, these for-profit entities that really want to see education privatized, I'm not surprised that we were set up in this way. So I want to tell you a little something just to start about Pamela Fisher. So Pamela Fisher, I didn't know until actually recently, she came into our school in May because I was working over the summer. I started my term as president on July 1st. July was the time we actually got the show cause sanction. So I was coming into office as Associated Students President right at the time we got the sanction. And I wasn't aware that Pamela Fisher came in as a consultant. She came in May as a consultant to the school because Don Griffin, and I love Don Griffin, I think he's a humane person, he has a huge heart, and with all the cuts, the $53 million that City College we had to take on, he didn't want to, you know, to lay off folks. He didn't want to cut needed services like categorical funding, like extended opportunity programs and services, which serves the lowest income students at CCSF. I'm an EOPS student. Also not cutting CalWorks, which serves single mothers at City College of San Francisco. Second Chance program, people coming out of the jails. Those are all programs that really speak to equity, right? He didn't want to cut those. But the state already had sliced 40% of those budgets. And they were asking for more. And Don Griffin, I believe the stress really wore him out and he got very ill, so he had to leave. And in comes Pamela Fisher as a consultant to help us find a new chancellor in May. She has a headhunting business. She has a headhunting business. She finds executive staff for colleges all over. And so she came in as this consultant, and you know, the board was so impressed with her. They were so enamored with this woman that in 4 days, she went from becoming a consultant to help us find a new chancellor to becoming our interim chancellor in 4 days. Wow. And she tells this story. She told this story, you know, in 4 days I came in and they said, you're so amazing, you must be our new interim chancellor. So also Pamela Fisher has stated that she talks to Barbara Bino every day. She has open communication lines with Barbara Bino. Barbara Bino, if you don't know, she's on the commission, right, for the ACCJC. She's the president. She's the president of the Accreditation Commission for Junior Colleges. And so this woman has direct contact with her every day. Also, Bob Agrella, our special trustee, he often states how much communication he always has with the state chancellor's office. You know, Bryce Harris, they're like buddies, you know, good old buddies, right? And so it confuses me. This woman comes in at May, and then all of a sudden in July, City College is on show cause. On show cause, right? So that information, I wonder, how did all that information get to the ACCJC that we were so broken, right? You know, you would only have to be in the inner workings of our school to say, oh, we can get them here, we can get them there. So, I mean, it may sound like I'm being a little paranoid, but this is, for me, when I heard that she wants to fire all of our department chairs. She wants to fire all of our department chairs, all of our deans, and rehire them. So I mean, you can imagine if someone has a staffing or headhunting business, that is like a dream, right? To get to rehire a whole new staff. You know, you're put on in 4 days as the interim chancellor. You have a direct contact with one of the lead people within the ACCJC, and she came in May to our school. So I'm a little concerned about who this Pamela Fisher person is, and I actually am. Yeah, it kind of makes me a little angry, but not even a little bit, a lot angry, because I connect the dots. You know, I'm connecting the dots, and I see there's a lot to be gained from these people, this rogue interim administration that's come in. They're not coming in to save us. You know, they're not coming in to save us. There's a financial interest in these folks coming in, and Pamela was able to somehow dupe the board into letting her in and become our interim chancellor. And I want to speak about the Board of Trustees a little bit. What I feel is that the Board of Trustees has been, for most part, throughout, you know, over the years, missing in action. They've been missing in action while people are, like administrators, were off making decisions, and that they were more concerned with running for office, for taking that next political step, than focused on our school. For instance, and I don't know how I feel about this, but our president of our board, John Rizzo, this upsets me. He was running for District 5 supervisor every time that election came up. Every time, and you're the president of the board. You know, other members of the board had their, you know, speaking to their own political interests. Steve No just discovered his law firm represents charter schools. For me, I would think that's sort of a conflict of interest, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a conflict of interest.
Kidding, that's a conflict. Yes.
You know, and there's things throughout the board. There's some that care, right? There's some of our board members definitely who have been there. They care. I know, you know, Chris Jackson. He sort of was on that point, one side, you know, of sort of losing it as that political springboard. But now he's sort of come and has found some unity with staff and with faculty. But there's been this culture, right? There's been a culture within the Board of Trustees is that this board is just, you know, it's a step for you to take your next step. You know, if you're running in the Democratic Party, okay, I'm going to get on the CCSF Board of Trustees and then go from there. But what's happening? We are in crisis. Statewide, we have lost $800 million to community colleges in California, $800 million. We've lost 500,000 students. We see policies like the Student Success Initiative, which is going to drastically narrow the door for thousands more students. Also policies like Race to the Top. You guys know of Race to the Top, I'm sure, what's happening. Obama's proposing this, and the Democrats are really a big part of this. And we can't, you know, the Democratic Party needs to be challenged around what they're doing in terms of education. And also Target 2020, if I didn't mention that. But she touched on, Wendy touched on the private foundations. They're also a huge part because they are really pushing the interests of the corporations, Lumina, you know, Bill and Melinda Gates. And actually Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they have a partnership with us through our Bridge to Success program, our high school sort of Bridge to Success, where we get high school seniors into City College. And so they're pushing a lot of this reform narrative. I mean, we even have now this report card, this scorecard, which doesn't even take into account how impacted our system has been. So you want to scorecard us, and you want to label us as broken and say that we need to implement all these standards, but what about the resources? Show us the money. Like, where is the funding for our schools? How are we supposed to support equity and support students moving forward if CSU, they have to freeze their enrollment in 2008? You know, UCs are impacted. Everyone's impacted because the money is not going where it needs to go. It's a priorities crisis.
I'm the bad guy. I'm interesting. Well, people hate politicians because they say smarmy things, but I'm going to say a smarmy thing, which is I think that that up here we have two examples of what is great about City College, and our students and our faculty are.
Speak into the mic.
Our students and our faculty are fantastic, and I'm so glad that you're both engaged as you are in saving City College. So I want to thank you both for that. I want to carefully limit my own sort of what I'm going to offer tonight. And my ability to sort of hold forth on City College and what's going on there is limited by several things. And one of them is just the simple fact that I'm the new guy. I've been on the board since January, and so I have ideas about what's happening at City College, but unlike Wendy and unlike Shanell, I actually am new to this, and so I need to learn from them and from others. Secondly, just as a board member, your sense of what's actually going on a day-to-day basis at a school is limited by that role. You're not there all the time. But in some ways, the biggest limitation on my ability to communicate, and the thing that makes me the most worried about speaking publicly about City College, is that actually the board at City College has been a huge problem and is identified in the accreditations report as a problem. And I'll talk about the ways in which the board has been a problem, but Shanell is right. And so when I speak publicly about City College, I want to be careful about not being part of the problem, and I also want to be careful about not saying things that are going to jeopardize our accreditation. All that being said, I'm an elected official, and it is my job to be out here to communicate with you and to hear from you about what you're concerned about, and to hear from you about what you're concerned about. And this shocking figure that Shanell gave, which is true, of 500,000 students statewide who have not been able to access community colleges over the last, is it 5 years? 3 years? You know, where did these community colleges throughout the state are the last resort for people? If they're not getting into City College, we've given up on an entire generation and we've sent these people off to, you know, God knows what. That is a huge crisis. So the financial issues at City College were not unique to City College. They may have been exacerbated by the fact that we are such a large community college, second largest in the country. We do things that no other community colleges do that the community expects us to. We have large non-credit offerings, including, you know, significant ESL and significant other programs that other institutions don't try to do. And so the problems that were true everywhere were even perhaps exacerbated harsher in San Francisco, and the financial challenges were even greater. And that related with some of the other problems at City College. The ACCJC identified a governance problem. They thought that what was called shared governance was broken at City College. Shared governance is a very good idea. It's that community colleges, you know, there's administrators, there's elected boards, politicians who are in charge of an educational institution. That's a little bit troubling. Shouldn't we be providing the people who work in the school, the students at the school, the faculty, shouldn't those people have a voice in the decisions that get made at the school? That's what shared governance is. That's the concept. The ACCJC, in looking at City College, determined, and I think correctly, that the structure we had in place to guarantee a voice for everyone was so cumbersome, so complicated, involved so many committees, that it had become a vehicle for inaction inertia, for killing ideas that people didn't like. And so the board, several or many members of the board felt that they actually weren't, you know, able to exercise their policy-making role. Which sort of brings us to kind of, I think, the last significant, but in some ways maybe the most significant problem with City College, which Shanell identified, the board. One of the things that the ACCJC doesn't like is boards whose members try to micromanage, insert themselves into the running of departments, in the decision-making around hiring, all of these things. There's pretty decent evidence that all of that was going on at City College prior to accreditation, prior to the ACCJC doing its evaluation. There's also a real legally protected role for the faculty in determining, at least being consulted around curricular decisions and around issues that affect what gets taught at a college. In San Francisco, at City College last year, those whole structures, those protections were broken. Basically, you had some members of the board at war with the faculty, with the administration as kind of a bystander, a referee, sort of, which is not really the way an institution like that can work. So in all sorts of ways, I think that when the ACCJC came to San Francisco and looked around, whether they were right to come to the conclusion of show cause, I don't know. But were there seriously big problems that the school seemed unable to solve on its own? I think that's very possible. I think that there were. And so I think the ACCJC levying some kind of sanction actually probably was correct. Now, there have been all sorts of consequences of that. You get put on show cause. It becomes hard to attract people. After 5 years of people having pay cuts and layoffs and dealing with an institution that seems to be falling apart, to then be told that you might be closing creates a whole cycle of difficulty in attracting new people, attracting students, attracting administrators. People start heading for the door, and all of that has happened over since that ACCJC determination was made last year. So, and maybe most significantly, I think the behavior of the Board of Trustees has changed significantly. And where before, I think it was absolutely clear that the Board of Trustees was a significant challenge to anyone being able to effectively run City College, in some ways we now have possibly the opposite problem, which is a board that is maybe overly acquiescent, but at least we're not in the way, which is I think where we were before. That's kind of the good news. The bad news, I mean, you've heard. Huge challenges remain. The staffing levels at every part of the institution are inadequate. There's not enough classified staff to effectively deal with things like payroll. The physical plant is not kept up. We don't have enough maintenance staff. I mean, everything. And people who who have given so much, our employees who have given voluntarily in many cases over many years, determining that they would not take raises, agreeing to layoffs that were painful, are now being hit with even more and being asked to do even more. So morale is terrible, and as I said, many people are leaving, and that is very worrying. Another thing that I'm frankly worried about is that we may end up in a situation where we restore financial stability, which is critically important. We won't retain our accreditation, but are dramatically underpaying our particularly our full-time faculty. There's a real possibility that we will end up, we could end up at the end of this year with full-time faculty earning, I don't know, I think the figure is maybe the 30-somethingth. Statewide. Now we're in San Francisco. This is the most expensive place, right? That's a challenge. We have to figure out a way to address that and to be able to attract and retain good quality faculty, I think. That's a real challenge. There are issues where I hope to be able to move the interim chancellor, the special trustee, my colleagues, and I have to be what the board was not and had not been for a long time, a member of a collegial body that gets along where the members get along with each other and are able to move the institution forward. That isn't your role. Your role is to fight for what you believe in. Your role is to fight for the City College that you believe in. Wendy does that, Shanell does that, other people in this room do that. Your job is to push me, to make me scared about my electoral future, to make my colleagues scared about theirs. We're going to be held accountable. And so you care about City College, you should care about City College, you should engage around it. And you should also recognize that I think both of you made the point that this is bigger than San Francisco. There are huge issues statewide around what community colleges will be allowed to do, what we will be funded to do. The board took lifelong learning out of the mission. I think that's a tragedy too, but that was a recognition of what we are being told by the state, by our legislator, by our state legislators, theoretically representing all of you and others in California, about what they want. They want community colleges focused on jobs, on getting people to four-year institutions. They don't believe that in a time of fiscal scarcity that lifelong learning should be a priority. Well, we need to change the environment of fiscal scarcity, but only you as voters, as political participants, as people who challenge our elected officials can change that at the state level. I think we have to do that. So a few more things just to maybe clarify. Prop A and whether it is or is not being used for the purposes that the voters passed it. I want to assure you of one thing. Whatever your view of whether it is appropriate to use Prop A funds for reserves, for retiree health care liability, for technology, so that people have computers that actually work, for maintenance, so that people can use bathrooms at the school, which I think actually does create a more conducive learning environment if you were able to use facilities. Even if you think that none of that is related to the mission of the school or is legitimate use of Prop A, there is still Prop A money going into classroom instruction, or reserved for that if the board wants to use it for that, and we will. A very significant chunk of Prop A. Now maybe we're not spending enough of Prop A on that. I would like to be spending more, wow, I really ate up a lot of time. But we are not totally flagrantly, in my view, misspending Prop A. Bryce Harris is the state chancellor. Bob Agrella is the special trustee, given to us at our request by the state chancellor. So that they should be talking to each other. That's not a weird thing. Whether they're rogues or not, I actually, I talk to these people regularly. I have some faith. They're not without flaws. But I actually think that Thelma Scott Skillman and Bob Agrella are trying. They're trying to do a job. They are not from San Francisco. They will not be with us forever. It will be very important, I think, to pick a chancellor who does understand San Francisco. And we will be doing that in the next year. We will have a new chancellor by the end of this year. Do I agree with the attacks on the 3 major unions? I don't know if it's a progressive thing. It's as a human being. I don't want to attack labor. I don't believe in attacking the people who work for us. I am hopeful. I don't know how the department chair's vote came out, but I am hopeful that the college has reached an accommodation with the department chairs that is not exactly what was proposed a year ago. That does make a number of significant changes that will make it easier to run the college and easier to avoid, to deal with financial challenges, but that will also preserve the important role of the department chairs. I hope that moving forward with our other unions, we will also be able to reach accommodations that respect our employees, that recognize that they are the institution, but get us what we need. And again, it is not in our interest to undercompensate our employees. We need good people to teach our students, to do the other work that happens at the college. There should be a shared understanding of that, and I try to impress that on our folks. So that's what I got. Questions? Okay. It was not just the financial problems that I think caused the ACCJC to levy a sanction or even show cause. What they say, what I have been told, when I have asked, there was no probation, there was no warning. How did we end up on show cause? There was no sanction in 2006. And what I'm told is, there was no sanction in 2006. There were a number of findings and problems. And when we came back to look at you, San Francisco, you had addressed none of them. You didn't take us seriously. Right? This stuff about SLOs, that didn't come up just for the first time, or mission statement, that didn't come up for the first time in 2012. That was 6 years old. And you told us that you'd addressed it. And then we come, and you haven't addressed it. Not only are you not doing the things that we're telling us, that we're telling you need to address, you're lying to us about it, San Francisco. And then we ACCJC, come and interview members of the board who say that they actually took actions to avert some of the financial, to deal with some of the financial challenges, and made decisions that should have saved money, and those decisions were never implemented, really. You have a structure, a governance structure, and an administrative structure that's so screwed up that your governing board makes decisions and the thing doesn't happen. That's interesting. I think that it's not just the financial stuff. It's like there's the financial stuff, but then there's all these other things that the accreditors started finding when they were poking around. And I think it was as much that and the feeling that San Francisco just didn't take accreditation seriously. It wasn't a priority.